You have questions, we have answers. This is Jane Muller.
And this is Ken Muller. Welcome to our show, all about real estate with Ken and Jane. Well, today, Jane, we're going to have a great show. That's the agreement, right?
That's right. Yes.
The expectation.
What is expectation?
A great show. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, the agreements versus the expectations, because oftentimes people agree on certain things, but the expectation of me might be different than the expectation of you.
That's correct.
And to help us with that, we have as our guest today, Jena Kinney. Jena is a certified insight coach. Jena, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate being here. And we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics today. So I'm really excited to be here and share.
Right.
That's my favorite topic too. Back a few months ago, I think Janet was very graciously and did a seminar for the chamber, I think including me, a lot of business owners, and learn a lot from it. It's very, very useful. It's almost like the principle fits all.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what situation, real estate, children, spouse, anything.
Right.
You know, it's work on every situation.
Yeah, and it's often, and it all comes down also to communication. Like, this is a little bit sidebar, but oftentimes Jane will talk to me and she'll say, did you, Joe said hi. And I'll be thinking of a million things in your mind. I'll be like, Joe who, Jane? I get so angry with her because sometimes she expects me to know, that's Joe. Is it Joe you, Joe K?
Yeah.
Joe, I don't know if that's a man-woman thing or it's a Jane thing. It's like, I'm very logical. I like you to give me as much detail as I can because my mind is going in many different directions. Or another thing she'll say is, I saw your girlfriend today. And of course I'll say, which one? Because
That's what I always
no,
say.
she does. She does. And I say, well, I literally tell her which one. I got this one, this one, this one, this one, that one.
Yeah.
So you got to break it. You got to be specific, right?
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yes. Now everybody can have many girlfriends, but only one wife, which is me.
That you know of, at least in this state of New Jersey.
Yes. That's scary.
You never know.
That's scary.
The show's taking a total turn.
That's right. I don't only show please.
Yeah, right. But that's why agreements and expectations are key things, right? Because you have an agreement, and then different people could have different expectations about what that agreement entails.
Absolutely.
So let's break it down, Jen, if you want to give us your brief bio, and then we'll get into the topic.
And so a lot of people are like, what does a certified insight coach do? And sometimes I ask the same question. Really, at the core of it, what I do is I help people turn from managers to leaders in their lives. Mm-hmm. Now, that could be corporate. That could be personally, right? Having more self-leadership, bringing yourself to the table, really owning who you are and what you want to be creating in your life. Mm-hmm. And so ultimately, that's what I do. So I work with people in business. I work with people in their personal lives. Oftentimes, clients hire me for growth in their business, and we end up talking about their personal lives a bit because, of course, it has an impact on things. So we just take a holistic look at their lives and kind of help them navigate what they want to create and help them create a path to get there quickly. So that's what I do.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Very, very fulfilling. Because you can see through your hard work, you can see the result in your client's life. You can see the change.
It's fascinating to really see, and especially when clients really dig deep and do the work. I feel like a proud mom.
Yes,
even though some of my clients are older than me, I still feel like a proud mom of them because of what they've done, what they've gone through to create that growth. It's really
in other words, you
beautiful.
help them grow internally, mentally, spiritually.
Yes.
You know,
And it's whatever they want.
Everything except physical growth, because that.
You know what, Ken? I disagree because
it could be
because once you really had that, I mean, you could do physically, you could go eat healthier and do
that's
something,
true. You could make them
or
healthy.
even you did nothing. Once you spiritually, emotionally in the right place, you look different.
Yeah.
You look happier. You look taller.
Yeah.
You look more open. You look more,
more
everything.
alive.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
right.
And I do have a client that was trying to gain weight. And so he created a plan to do that, and he wanted to do that in a really healthy, slowed down way. And so even physically.
Okay. So you cover
right.
all the spheres, right. So a lot of listeners are probably thinking, what do we mean by agreement versus expectation? What's the distinction, and when does it become an issue? So why don't we give some real life examples, and then we can also apply it to the real estate sphere as well.
Perfect. So Agreements versus expectations is a distinction, right? And a distinction is just a small shift in the way that you're viewing something to really see something different. So we all have a lot of expectations in our lives. We have I had an expectation that when I got in my car to come here today, when I pushed the button, it was going to start.
Right.
I had an expectation that as I drove here, people were going to mind the traffic laws, right? But what I find is the more expectation I have, the more resentment that I have in my life, because most of the time people do not operate according to my expectations.
Yes.
Right.
And so when we can get out of that phase of looking at expectations and instead looking at agreements. So let me give you an example. My kids, when we go into a store, especially if they have friends along with us, my kids are pretty clear on what we've agreed in the past for proper behavior. Yeah. But now we have another person coming into our circle of agreement. And so as we're pulling in the parking lot, I will say to my kids, what are the agreements while we're in the store? And they come up with a few, and I usually have one or two that I want to make sure that we have. And then we go through and I say, okay, is this something we can all agree to? And then they say yes, 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 of course, because they can't wait to go into the store. And then I follow up with another question. Is that something I can count on from you? And it's really interesting because the difference between expectations and agreements, when we expect something of someone, when our parents expect something from us, we almost rebel, right? We almost don't want to do it because our parents are telling us to do it. And guess what? Human nature is the same way. When I tell Jane that she needs to go do this, she may know that she needs to go do this, but she's going to rebel inside because I told her. When we co-create that agreement like we did in the car with the kids where they're feeding in, I'm feeding in, we're all making sure we're on the same page, they want to live into their word. And guess what? My kids, for the most part, do. They're really good when we go into the store with friends where they could get a little bit out of hand or, have a little bit too much fun.
But that's because you set the agreement up front, so they knew what the expectation was, right? That's your. So you're right. You hit that. And you reminded them of that, so there was no deviation would be tolerable.
And Ken, I would even go as far to say that. Actually, there was no expectation. Yeah. There was only agreement.
Right.
Yes.
Because when there's expectation, that means I'm expecting them to do something, and they may not know that I expect them to do that. Let me give you another example. I have a house cleaner, and she came to the house one time. I needed her to clean all 3 floors. She usually only cleans 2. And we chatted for a half hour, caught up because, we're friendly like that. Sure. And I told her at the last minute, I'm like, oh, by the way, I need you to clean all 3 floors. And she said, I don't have time. I've got to be over here at this time.
Sure.
And so I was like, okay, fine. Just do these 2 floors. I'll finish up the rest. Well, I got really upset about it. And it hit me a couple weeks later that I had an expectation of her. I had an expectation that she was going to do whatever I needed her to do at whatever time, because she's done that for me in the past. Yes. But and as soon as I saw that, all of the anger, the resentment that I was feeling towards her immediately lessened, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I expected her to mind my schedule, do what I wanted to do, right? And with no consideration of her schedule. And I'm like, I could have texted her ahead of time. I could have called her. I could, there were so many things I could have done. Yeah. And it was like, oh, I got caught in an expectation.
Without an agreement. And
no
we
agreement.
We ran into that oftentimes with professional cleaners too. And we represent we represent about 100 landlords, and oftentimes we get involved in getting the cleaner there and having the unit professionally clean. But cleaners, you can't just tell a cleaner, oh, I need to professionally clean, because that's an expectation. My expectation about what professionally cleaning will entail could be different than theirs. So it's best to commit it to say, I need the refrigerator cleaned, I need obviously the floors mopped, the rugs vacuumed, the windows cleaned, the blinds cleaned, the bathrooms cleaned, the basement, I want that cleaned, the exterior, is there anything you want done, the oven cleaned. So you have to really set the framework for a solid agreement. Otherwise, the expectation will be that they'll leave things out, and it'll be just because their expectation is different than your expectation.
Absolutely.
Because truly, right, for the cleaning service, right, our experience is it's not all the cleaning service, including windows. Okay, if you pay $150, they not clean your window. Let's get that right. So we learn from that, because sometimes the landlord said, I hired a professional cleaning service. Can you provide access? Yes. But when we go there, we have to report landlord's job done so they can pay. We came there and said, hang on a minute. The window's still dirty. The oven's not clean. And then but that's exactly what
there's grease above the microwave.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of times the tenants have heavy cooking and then the grease, and it's impossible to get it off in one cleaning. So you have to set the expectation about what you expect the cleaner to do, or how effectively, or how much.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for me, whenever I'm experiencing any kind of upset, I start looking, was there an expectation at play? If I'm frustrated, resentful, angry, upset in any way, I'm like, ooh, did I have an expectation at play? And when I stop and take a look, I can usually see that occurring. So then from there, I try to think about, okay, well, what can I do to what needs to occur? Like, what's the request? Just as you were saying, Ken, with the cleaners, right? The request is, you started to learn this early on, getting upset. And then it's like, okay, the request is this, all these things need to be done. And this is where the specificity becomes so important in that agreement, right? And I know we have some examples that we want to talk about later where that specificity is really important. And so then once we do that, we co-create the agreement, right? It's like, now I sit down and have a conversation with you, Ken, as the cleaner. Okay, this is what I'm planning to do. We co-create the conversation.
And we kind of make a contract, because that's what is a contract. If it's not, it can be an oral agreement too, but it has to be an agreement where there's a bargain for exchange, where there's an offer and acceptance, and I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars, and in exchange, the bargain for exchange is you're going to do X, Y, and Z.
That's
so
right.
you have to. That's when you pay a cleaner. I'm going to pay you $100, $200. But in exchange, I want you to clean, vacuum, clean the appliances, clean the windows, or you have to set the terms so that my expectation is the same as your expectation, right?
Absolutely. Yes. And so then once you get there where you think you have the agreement, I like to ask a couple of questions. The question I like to ask is, how does this work for you? Because now that's an open-ended question where the person has to tell me something. It's not just, yes, I agree. How does this work for you? I have to say, Ken, this works great. I'm in complete agreement. Or I have to come back and say something else. Now, I don't stop there. Now, it feels like we have an agreement. I like to check how solid the agreement is with another question. There's 3 questions that I like to ask. One of them is this something I can count on? I mentioned that one before with my kids. What can I do to help ensure this happens? Sometimes in corporate situations where there's a lot of moving parts, I might need to get involved. Or you can also ask, what might get in the way of getting this done? That's a great question to really check that strength of the agreement from that person.
Right. All right, that sounds great. Let's agree to take a break right now. Then we'll come back right after these messages. Okay, welcome back to our show. We're joined today with Jena Kinney. Jena is a certified insight coach. And Jena, before I forget, please give your contact info so our listeners can reach out to you.
Yes, so I can be reached at Jena at jenakinney.com. That's JENA at JENAKINNEY.com, or 201-978-3915 is my cell phone. You can text me or give me a call.
That's great. And remember, that's Jena with one N. Right?
Yes, correct.
that's how we clear this.
Correct.
So we set the agreement from reaching you.
Yes, perfect, perfect.
You just mentioned before the break, Jena, can I count on you? That's really a campaign slogan. Now it's a campaign slogan. Can I count on you?
Yes.
Yeah, you'll be there voting. Are you doing your mail ballot? Did you would you take the time in the morning and go there and to vote? So that's really a can I count on you?
Yeah. And it's solidifying an agreement. agreement,
Yes,
right?
that's right.
As you're having that exchange with
Yeah.
that politician or
Yeah.
the person that's helping
Yeah.
the politician get the votes.
Yes, that's right.
It's the power of that agreement.
Yes.
Right.
Really beautiful.
Yes.
And I think you summed it up by saying it's really the stronger the agreement, the less the problematic it's going to be, the less problems you have with the expectations being different. So
Yes.
so as best you can solidify the agreement, that'll
That's true, because once there was somebody knock on our door a long time ago, and I didn't even know him. He introduced himself and talk about the local politics. I really didn't understood that much that time.
Sure.
But he said, "Can I count on you?" So I said yes because I really want to keep going.
Yeah.
And after that, I had to go.
I was just going to say
I agreed
that.
with
Yes.
him. Yes.
I love that you brought that up because this is the power of the agreement, right?
Yeah.
The expectation. Remember before I said we want to rebel?
Yeah.
The expectation, you want to live into your word, even if you don't know what you're really living
Yeah,
into,
exactly.
you want to.
Yeah.
So that's the power of the agreement because human beings, we want to do what we say we're going to do.
Yes. Yes.
And so that's the power of it. That you
Yep.
gave a perfect example of the power of that because that is what we're going for. Then you went and you
Yep.
voted, you did
Yep.
the thing.
Yep. I had no opinion before I met him.
Yes.
I at that time, I really didn't have much political view myself. But just because he knocked on my door, he was nice. And he, at the end of our conversation, he said, "Can I count on you?" He looked in my eyes, "Can I count on you?" I see he's so really, eager and he try hard. So I said yes. But once I say yes, I had to go.
Yeah.
I had to go. It's same with our daughter, right? And she loved marching band. But marching band take a lot of time. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whole night, and then plus Saturday, whole day. So what time is for the homework, right? So I said to her, we have to make an agreement. I mean, at that time, right, I said I didn't had the course. So I said, we have to have some expectation, right?
Yeah.
And you have to keep your grade at a certain level. Otherwise, you have to withdraw.
And
so
you know
that's
that level. She won't tell you what that level, but that level was Tiger Mom level. So
No, it wasn't too bad.
It was pretty. Yeah, well, I mean,
Wasn't too bad.
Not A+, but it was pretty. It was pretty.
Yeah.
It was a Tiger. But anyway, nonetheless, they did make an agreement, right?
Yeah,
Because
and then
that would
she
be not an
kept-
expectation. That would
She
be an
kept
agreement.
her part of bargain.
Yeah.
She keep her level at that level, and we support her fully with her.
Yes.
I mean the event. Even though sometimes we have appointment, we have to leave early or do whatever. We have to pick her up. Can't always volunteer there. We do all we can to support her.
Yes.
But there's agreement.
Yes.
There you have to do well, give it all. You can't just slack off, right?
Absolutely.
And also your grade has to meet a certain level. So we will do what we do to support you 100%.
Yeah. Perfect.
So, yep.
Beautiful.
See, work with the home, with everything.
I'll tell you, this was the most life-changing thing that I've experienced.
Mm-hmm.
The more that I try to go into any experience, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I tried to come here, as I was driving here, I was trying to clear my mind of any expectation that I might have.
Right.
Because at the end, when I have an expectation, either things go well, which then just means like,
It's
blah.
okay.
Like it's like at the end, I'm feeling like, yeah, it went as well as I thought it would.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Or it didn't go as well, which is a negative
Yes.
feeling. When I come with no expectation and just being open to the experience, I'm probably going to have a very different feeling when I leave here. And so any place where I'm trying, like literally in my life, I'm trying to look where am I having expectations? Where can I clear those out and make more solid agreements? With my husband, it's every weekend. If we don't make an agreement about what's going to happen that weekend, we usually don't get along really well.
Really?
We're both middle children. We're both very independent. We both have a plan in our heads. And when things don't go according to our plan, our expectation in our head, we start to act out with each other.
So really, then it's about expressing your expectations, whether it be within a personal relationship, whether it be a business relationship. It's about putting your expectations on the table so you and your counterparts can iron out an agreement as to
That's
so
it.
so there's
That's it.
no surprises, right?
Yeah,
That's what
yeah.
it comes down to.
That's what it comes down to. And when we do that, we usually have a great weekend. And guess what? We're not doing everything I want to do. We're not doing everything he wants to do at the times that we want to do it. But we've agreed that that's how we're going to be operating, and we do it for the most part. I mean,
Sure.
You know, we'll talk a little bit about what happens when we don't meet agreements and when we have disagreements. But I think that's the real beauty of it. And it just makes life simpler. Now, one of the things I hear from people all the time is, Jena, I don't have time to go make all of these agreements.
Right.
I say you don't have time not to make agreements, because what happens when we don't make agreements? We get resentment, frustration, right? There's usually a lot of cleanup that needs to happen because we get upset, and then we get frustrated, and then we get mad. And
you have to spend more time patching over the fact that you didn't make a clear-cut agreement,
right.
so the expectations of someone else were different, and they're pissed off because you didn't fulfill your end according to their perception.
Yeah.
So it's almost analogous to in life if you rush somewhere. If you end up rushing somewhere, like you're rushing to get the phone, you end up, it happened to me, running up the steps, spill the coffee, so I make more mess, and all that rushing, have to clean up, and then I'm even more ticked off that I did that, right?
It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
I think the agreement is more like old time. I'm not talking about now. Technology is great, but it used to be. It's like a map, right? I'm so busy. I'm running late. I have no time to look up the map. I just get there. But take your time to look at a map. Where are you going first, right? So I think the agreement is serve like a guidance, like a principle. We both have to agree, that's very important. And come to the real estate,
we're
right?
going to talk about that.
Yeah,
right.
sometimes the agent, right, they have too high expectation. I mean, if I meet you, Jena, you call me for show a house. I show you. I expect you to buy that house. It's not happening. And you get frustrated, your client get frustrated, and they feel you pushy. So if your expectation is today, I'm getting to know Jena better, know their need better. And at the same time, I want to take the time to view more homes myself, build up my own skills and knowledge, and you have a different day together.
Yes.
So that's
a perfect example of really getting conscious about the expectations that you're having and trying to clear those away the best that you can, because you will have a different experience when you're operating that way. And then coming to an agreement even with the client, right? Where it's like, hey, I understand we're probably going to need to look at a few houses before we find something that you're even able to verbally describe to me what you really want.
You have to get to know each other and what they like, what they don't like, what they need. It's all part of the process, right?
Yes,
so the expectation has to be tailored in that way.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of frustration and resentment.
And you can't feel it. The buyer feel it. Say, you just want me to buy a house. I mean, you're not there helping me to achieve my goal.
That's right.
They're going to call another agent.
Absolutely.
So that's why, not because they're not loyal to you, it's because you somehow push them away.
Yeah.
And let's talk about another, let's switch gears towards the seller. You represent a lot of sellers. And let's talk about if you go on a listing appointment and the seller may think that they may realize everyone knows what the neighbor's house sold for, in a similar period. And they may say, my house is bigger and it's more updated, and then a year ago the neighbor's house sold for $600,000, and therefore the seller's expectation may be that their house is worth $650,000 or whatever the case may be. So you have to be prepared for that when you're dealing in real estate.
Absolutely.
Sometimes the seller have a very selective memory. And if they call you on 2008, their memory set on 2006 and 2007. My neighbor sold. But if they call you 2015 and they don't talk about 2011 and 12.
Right.
So once again, expectation versus agreement is very important.
Yeah.
What they can expect from us as a professional real estate agent. Also, what we expect from them. So that's very important.
Absolutely. And I think this is where, sitting down and having a conversation with those sellers, right? It's like, hey, I understand this is what you expect. I'm afraid we might end up here, right? You expect 600. I'm thinking it's 550. Here's what we can agree.
Have like a roadmap, because we're almost
Yeah.
out of time. We have like less than 2 minutes, but that's the last point we want to cover. We're going to have you back next week for the show to continue this.
Yes.
But that's but that's very important to have a clear roadmap. So the expectation is set. We're going to try your method. We're going to market it at 600 for X period of time, and we're going to do so many open houses. And this is our marketing strategy. However, you and I have to agree that if we don't have activity or any offers by a month, 30 days later, then we're going to have to follow. You're going to have to follow my advice, revisit it, and follow my professional advice, and maybe drop the price 25 or 50,000.
Right, and you set
you have
that
to have
time
you have to
frame.
have that roadmap. Otherwise, the
right,
seller
right.
will have very short-term memory, and we'll say, well, no, my expectation was this. You told me we could get it, and say, no, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this is my notes from our meeting we had back on September 5th, and here is what we agreed to.
We agreed. Yeah.
Back on that, right?
So we're out of time, but Jena, I want to thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being
Thank
our
you.
guest. And once again, just please give your phone number so if any of our listeners want to reach out to you.
Yes, it's 201-978-3915.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the weekend. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.